Hi everyone, Danielle here with a video showing you start to finish two different cards that we're going to make. And one's going to be simple and one will be a little more complicated. But keep in mind that these products and techniques can be used for many other things like scrapbooking, making wall art, you can stamp on fabric, you can make personalized stationery, note cards, gift bags, everything. So don't feel limited to cards. But today we are going to make a card. So we're going to start with a plain white pre-folded card. You can get these at your craft store, or you could always make your own by just cutting and folding some cardstock. We're also going to need some stamps. So we're going to use these clear stamps. It's called You and Me by Hero Arts. You also might be familiar with the regular older woodblock stamps with rubber. You can use either type, it doesn't matter. I just happen to pick these clear ones for today. Since we are using the clear stamps, you're going to need to use what's called an acrylic block, and it's just this clear block. Mine happens to have grid lines on it, which I like because it helps me to stamp a straight image because I wouldn't be able to stamp straight to save my life. So we have our paper, we have our acrylic block and our stamps. And now we're going to get started. I went ahead and just stamped and cut out some of the things that I wanted to use today just to save time. And I feel like I don't really need to show you how to stamp because it's self-explanatory. But what I am going to show you is an easy way to use your acrylic block. So we have this You and Me sentiment that I stamped ahead of time. But the You, the ampersand, and the Me are actually three separate stamps. And this is where your acrylic block comes in really handy, especially if you have the lines. So instead of trying to stamp at three separate times, what I'm going to do is take those three stamps, I'm going to line them up. I'm kind of rushing through this, so it's not going to be perfect. But I'll line them up as straight as I can, and then I'm going to use one of the grid lines on my block as a guide to make sure they're straight, and then I'm just going to push down and pick up all three stamps at once. So now I can go ahead and take all three stamps that I already lined up, put them in my ink, and stamp them on my paper, just like that, and then you can cut it out like I already did. Makes it a lot easier than stamping three different times. And I use a VersaFine black ink. It's one of the best black inks that I've come across since I started stamping, and you can get these at AC Moore, Michaels, and Joann's too. So we have our card. I have our pre-cut stamped images that I did ahead of time. And I also made this little heart. I just cut it out of some pattern paper. So you can buy pattern paper at your local craft store as well, or you could get these cute little mini books. Sometimes you can find them at your craft store. I usually order mine online. And I'm really bad at cutting out shapes, so I took some time and made a little template ahead of time. So I made sure I got a nice heart to use for the card. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tape gun, and I have this really big industrial sized one. Because I make cards a lot, but you can always just pick up one of these smaller ones at your local craft store. And make sure you get one that has tape that is photo safe and acid free, just in case someone ever wanted to hang on to these cards, or especially if you're making wall art and you want it to last for a couple years. So I'm going to go ahead and line up my heart as centered and straight as I possibly can and just push it down. I'm going to put some more tape on this big ampersand and do the same thing. What I like to do is just kind of place it gently and take a look at it and see if it's straight, and if I don't like it, I'll just kind of pull it up and reposition it. So make sure you have it in a spot that you really like it before you go ahead and push it down really hard, because the glue is really sticky and could rip your paper if you try to pull it up. So I just really want the You and Me that I stamped ahead of time. I kind of changed my mind with what I wanted to do. So I'm just going to cut those out and trim them up a little bit. I'm not really worried about them being perfectly square. That's not really the look that I was going for. And instead of using that regular tape that I just showed you, I'm going to use what are called these foam adhesives. So they're like little blocks of foam, and they're sticky on both sides. And what they're going to do is make these little pieces of paper kind of pop up off the card, give it some dimension. So you just peel the backs off like you would a Band-Aid, and I'm going to figure out where I want them, and once I have them in a spot I like, then I will stick them down. It's nice to add a little bit of dimension instead of just having a flat card. Gives it a little something. Now, to me this still looks a little bit plain, so what I'm going to do to finish it off is take one of these fine tip black pens that you can get at your craft store, and I'm just going to hand draw a little border around the outside of the card. Now, if you are a perfectionist, you can certainly get a ruler out and draw some straight lines. But I like the hand-drawn look, so I'm just going to go ahead and take my pen and draw some little borders around the outside of the card. And through the magic of video editing, it is done. So I like the look of this. I think that hand-drawn border really just finished off the card nicely. So that was our simple card. Now we're going to use the same stamps and we're going to go ahead and do something a little more complicated, just so I can show you how much you can really do with paper and stamps. So we have our plain card. I have the same sentiment that I stamped out from before. This time I'm going to use some pattern paper, and then I just showed you that green heart. I used the same template and cut the heart out of some green cardstock. So what we're going to do is a little bit different than before. I'm going to use this special ink called Versamark. It's a watermark stamp ink, and it's sticky, like almost like a glue pad, but it's clear. And you could always stamp with this and just use it as is, but we're going to do a little something special. So I'm going to take this sticky watermark ink and I'm going to ink up this big rubber stamp that I have. And I'm going to push down the heart that I had pre-cut before. And I'm going to push down to make sure that the cardstock really picks up that watermark ink, because I want to make sure that there's plenty of it on there. And then when you flip it over, it's hard to see, it's really faint, but you can kind of see this tone-on-tone effect that the watermark ink gives the paper. Now you could always just leave it as it is. It's very, it gives a nice little touch to the heart, very delicate, but I want to make it a little more, I want to make it pop a little more. So what I'm going to do is take some embossing powder, and it doesn't come in these big Tupperware containers, I just put it in them, and I'm going to scoop it and pour it right over the heart that we just stamped. And since that watermark ink is tacky, this embossing powder, which is just clear, is only going to stick to where we stamped. It's going to come off the rest of the heart. And that embossing powder comes in a million different colors, and you can get it glittered and whatever else. So you have a million possibilities with embossing powder. And what we're going to do now is use this heat gun, and it's pretty much like a super hot blow dryer. If you don't have a heat gun and you wanted to try this, you could always try it with your blow dryer. But a heat gun really does the job nicely. And I'm going to just hold it down with my scissors so the heart doesn't blow away, and turn on my heat gun and get to work. And as you can see, as the embossing powder starts to melt, it really changes the look of where we stamped. It gets like really dark. Even though this embossing powder was just clear, it really darkens up where it was stamped. And it dries almost instantly, and it's shiny and very glossy. Really smooth to touch. So you could leave it like this, or you could take it a step further, which I'm obviously going to do for you. And I'm going to take these really neat inks called distress inks, and they come in a whole bunch of different colors, and you can do a whole lot of things with these inks that are really cool. But just for today, I'm going to show you kind of one of the most basic things you can do with these distress inks. So I'm going to pick a couple colors that I like, and I'm going to use this ink blending tool, and on the end of it is a foam pad, and it's pretty much the same thing as one of those cosmetic wedges that you would use to apply foundation. And I'm going to ink up my foam wedge, and underneath of my heart I have a craft mat. Some people actually just go ahead and use a silicone baking mat. Same idea, it's really slick surface, so my foam slides right over it. You obviously don't want to do this on your dining room table because you could stain, and you really don't want to do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep inking up my little foam tool, and I'm just going to go around the edges of this heart over and over until I get a look that I like. And you can see over time, when you just keep working it, that the ink obviously is going to change the color of the paper, and it's going to be resisted by the embossing powder we just used, and it just really gives it another layer of dimension. So there we have it. So we started with the plain green heart, and now we have totally changed the look of it. I'm just going to clean up my ink. So we're done with the heart. I embossed it and used my foam blending tool. And what I'm going to do next is, I showed you in the beginning that pattern paper, and I'm going to do the same thing on this pattern paper, except what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the different words from this same stamp set, I'm going to stamp them onto my pattern paper in the watermark ink that we used before, and I'm going to clear emboss them. And I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and then I'm going to ink blend that blue color over the top of this pattern paper. So it's really going to give it a neat effect and add some color and dimension to this, which is cute pattern paper, but I want to do a little more. So I'm just going to go ahead, and I already, through the magic of time, stamped and embossed all of those little words. You can see them up in the corner of the video. I already stamped and heat embossed all of those, and so what I'm going to do now is come back with my ink blending tool and some blue ink. I'm trying to show you that I embossed it, but it's kind of hard to see because it was clear. But the embossing powder is just really neat to use because once it melts, it does resist the ink, and so the only thing that's going to show through is the pattern paper underneath. So I'm going to take my ink blending tool and I'm just going to start working just like I did with the heart, and working around the outside of the paper. You can see the color starting to come onto the paper, and I'm just going to kind of fast forward and show you the end. So you can very faintly, you know, especially around the edges, see some of the words coming through, and you'll see in the finished picture, you'll be able to see it a lot better. So that's that. Same idea as the heart with the blending. Here's the paper before we started, and here it is after. You can kind of see the words, and obviously it's changed from this kind of cream background to blue, which I think looks really neat, and it's going to look nice with our card. So here's our changed background paper, and now I'm going to take our card. Now if you do use the ink blender, you want to wipe up your craft sheet so that you don't get ink all over your white card. I'm going to take my tape gun and I'm just going to put some adhesive on the back. I'm going to eyeball it and center it the best I can. And once I'm happy with where it is, I'll push it down. So we have our card base. And I wasn't really happy with the heart. I wanted to add a little bit more color just to the edges so that it really pops and stands out when I put it onto the pattern paper. So I'm taking my ink blending tool and I'm just going around the edge of the heart with a darker shade of green. Same Distress inks, just a darker shade. And I'm going to link to all of the different tools and products and ink and everything that I used below, and you can just click on the thumbnails and it'll take you to a place online where you can buy all of these things. But like I mentioned several times, a lot of this stuff you can find at a Michael's or Joann's or an AC Moore. But if you're lazy and you want to do your one-stop shopping, you can definitely pick them up. So I'm done inking around the edge of the heart, and you can see that it really just makes it pop and stand out against that background paper, and that's kind of the look I wanted to go for. I want that heart to be front and center. So we're done all our stamping, and we pre-stamped our sentiment strip before, so I put some glue on the, not glue, but tape on the back of that, and I'm just going to line it up where I think it looks nice and press it down. And obviously I have these little pieces that are hanging off the edge, which is no problem. I'm just going to take my cutting scissors and I'm going to flip it over and just, you can't really see and I apologize, but I'm just going to snip off those pieces that are hanging over the edge. Like so. And that is that. So let me clear some of this stuff out of the way. And now you can see both of our cards. The first one we made, which was more simple, and the second one, which was a little more complicated. So I hope you learned a little something, and thanks for watching.